الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I ask Allah to give us beneficial knowledge and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes from us our weaknesses and our mistakes and our forgetfulness, and He makes us of those who are upright in His religion with khushu' and iman. We are continuing today with the series of books has been authored by Sheikh Muhammad al-Uthaymin rahimahullah, and he's got a reasonable number which talk about salawat. So we looked at the description of salat in our last sitting, and today we are going to look at something which follows on from that, which is Sujood as-Sahw. And then inshallah he's also got different books and different topics connected to the salat. We will continue with that inshallah. Next week's topic, bi'idhnillah, will be on the ruling on the person who abandons the salat. So he's actually got a small risala, a small treatise, which he talked about in the ruling of abandoning the salat. What does that constitute? What is the ruling, etc. So we'll look at that next week, and the theme will continue surrounding salat. But today, we've got Sujood as-Sahw. And the author, well, it's important before we go into the book, it's very important for us to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made khushu' in salat something which is very important. Allah says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, the believers have been successful. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ, those who in their salat have a level of concentration, submissiveness towards Allah, focus, humiliation. They benefit from their salat. And you will find many of the salaf have said that they are successful, the believers, because of their level of concentration in the salat. And there's many narrations. There's also another narration from Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, which has been narrated by Bukhari. He said, "Min fikh al-mar', from the intelligence of a person, iqbaluhu ala hajatih hatta yuqbala salatih, that the person will focus in his salah to the extent that he wants to benefit from. Obviously, if you want to benefit a great deal, you will focus more. Wa qalbuhu farigha, and his heart will be completely devoid of thinking about anything else. His concentration will be in the salah." And this is an intelligent person who seeks to perfect his salah, as Abu Darda is saying here. And Allah talks about it in the Quran. There are many ayat, many hadith, but the topic here is not to talk about the concentration in the salat. The topic here is to talk about a mercy that has been given to us because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us, and He knows that we are not machines. He knows that we are not robots. He knows that you can't just switch on iman and switch iman off. So because of that, forgetfulness will happen. Slip-ups will occur. So that's the topic that we are talking about today. Sujood as-Sahw. Sujood as-Sahw, or Sahw in the salat, refers to a level of forgetfulness that a person has had in the salat, but then he recovers that he has made a mistake. What does he do in that scenario? Now, before going into this, the Shaykh does talk about it later on, but I thought it's important that we talk about this now so that it becomes a lot clearer before we go into the topic. The ulama have said that your salat consists of conditions, pillars, wajibat, and sunan. Conditions are those things that you need to have before you pray. So you can't pray without wudu, you can't pray without covering your awrah, you can't pray until the time has entered. Those are conditions. And then the ulama have talked about pillars. So you have to stand, you have to make ruku', you have to make sujood. If you miss a ruku' from one of the rak'at, or you miss a sajda from one of the rak'at, or you didn't do Fatiha according to the correct opinion that we looked at last time, in one of the rak'at, then the salah will be invalid because those are one of the pillars. But then you have the wajibat and then you have the sunan. And the ulama here are talking about the wajibat and the sunan. They can be made up by sahw, and you don't need to repeat those actions. So it's important that we understand that there are different actions in salah, and the ruling on those actions would then necessitate different outcomes if we made forgetfulness in that. And again, if we were to talk about the pillars, etc., that would be very extensive. So that is something maybe for you to look at in your own time. But it is important for us to know before we go into this topic, there are conditions, there are pillars, and there are wajibat. So the author begins by saying, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. And he goes on to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he sends peace and blessings upon him and upon the companions and those who follow them in goodness. And then he said, أما بعد فإن كثير من الناس يجهلون كثير Loads of people have a great deal of ignorance min ahkam al-Sujood fi salat. That in their salat, they don't know the ruling when it comes to what they should do if there is an element of forgetfulness. The Shaykh is saying that in the introduction. So he now categorizes in his introduction that there are 4 types of people. Number 1, those who know the rulings and they know what to do in the scenario that they're in. Another group of people who don't know anything, and they leave the salah and they're not really that bothered about it. They've made forgetfulness, the salah is deficient. And then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, now this is a different fiqhi opinion, and this is one of the reasons why he's authored this book, not only just to explain, but to also clarify that there are different ways of doing it. The Shaykh says in the introduction here, sometimes some of the ulama, or you may have read it in your own books, etc., or you've been taught this way, have said that you should always do sujood al-Sahw before the salam. So if you make a mistake, you make, depending on what type of mistake, if it's a pillar or if it's a wajibat, then you would do the sujood al-Sahw and then make the salam. And some of the ulama say that you should always do it after. And we'll touch upon that later on also, and what those madhahib and what those opinions are. But the Shaykh is saying here, sometimes there is a great deal of ignorance, and sometimes there is some confusion, and sometimes there is absolute negligence. Really, if you think about it, that's what he's saying in the introduction, in those 3 or 4 different types of people. So now the Shaykh is saying here, وَلِذَا, because of this, كَانَتْ مَعْرِفَ الْأَحْكَامُ, that the person must know about the ahkam of sujood مهمة جدا لا سيما, and what the Shaykh is saying here, especially لأئمة الذين يقتدي الناس بهم, especially for the people who are leading other people in prayer. This person must really know in a great deal of intricate detail as to what he should do when it comes to sahw in salat. But if we extend that further, and I think this really applies to what we're talking about right now, what we're doing here, is that if the imams of the masjid, like the Shaykh is saying here, is very important for them to know, then it's also very important for them then to teach the people and what they themselves should be doing if there is forgetfulness. So this is what the author is saying in the introduction. It's important for us to be taught in the masjid, and that people are dependent on it, like the Shaykh is saying here, because the imams of the masjid are followed. تقلدوا مسؤولية في اتباع المشروع في صلاتهم الذين يؤم الناس يؤم المسلمين بها. They are those who are entrusted to lead the people in prayer, and people are dependent on the way that they do the sujood al-Sahw. So it's very important that we have sittings like this to explain to people that forgetfulness can occur, and these are the different scenarios, and this is what you should be doing. So the Shaykh said, rahimahullah, in the completion of his introduction, he said the reason why I wanted to write this is to add some clarity and to bring about some benefit, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate and give us assistance in understanding this subject. So he said, was-sawab, sujood al-Sahw, he said, rahimahullah, and now he's entering into the book, what is the correct opinion and the correct way of looking at sujood al-Sahw is 2 sajdas which are done by the person who is praying because of a level of forgetfulness. And if you look at it, this is the definition that he has given to what sujood al-Sahw is. 2 sajdas that a person does when he is prayed because of a mistake or a forgetfulness or a mishap or something that or oversight during his prayer. And the Shaykh said, rahimahullah, forgetfulness is one of 3 scenarios. You can't have a 4th one. It's one of 3 scenarios. Either you've added something, or you have forgotten to do something, or you are in a state of doubt. Either you know that you've added something, or you know that you've forgotten something, or that you are not sure. So now you are in a state of doubt. So now the Shaykh is going to explain what these 3 scenarios are and what a person should do in each one of those 3 scenarios. So he begins, rahimahullah, looking at az-ziyada. So now we have a ziyada or naqs wa shak. Ziyada refers to doing something extra, and he knows he has done something extra in the salat. Or naqs, that he has missed something out, and shak is a doubt. So now az-ziyada, he said, rahimahullah, If a person has added something to the prayer, there are three scenarios. If he has done something on purpose, what's the ruling on that? So now, for example, let's say Salat al-Isha. He knows he should be praying 4 rak'at. But he thinks to himself, I'll stand for a fifth one. I feel a lot energetic. I feel my iman is strong. Let me just stand for a fifth one. What's the ruling on that? The whole action is nullified. So the Shaykh is saying here, az-ziyada, إِذَا زَادُ الْمُصَلِّ فِي صَلَاتِ قِيَامٌ أَوْ قُعُودٌ. Any part of the prayer that he adds to the prayer on purpose, مُتَعَمِّدًا بَطَلَتْ صَلَاتُهُ. So if he does it on purpose, then the salah is nullified. Now if we go back to what the Shaykh was saying about what sahw is when a person is not sure or he's made a mistake, but now the Shaykh is saying here, if you are sure and you're doing it on purpose, then that's not sahw anymore, and your salah is invalid. You've done something which resembles the salah, but it's not salah. And because it's not salah, it's invalidated. Because there's no such thing as two ruku' in each rak'ah, for example, in a normal prayer, or something like that, or 5 rak'at for Isha. It doesn't exist. Therefore, he's not praying salah then. We don't know what that is. Therefore, it is nullified. So that's one scenario of a person doing something extra. Another scenario of a person doing extra, he does it by mistake, and he doesn't remember that he is doing that thing by accident. He's adding that thing by accident. And in that scenario, as soon as he remembers, he should stop doing it. As soon as he remembers, he should stop doing it. And the Shaykh gives an example. مثال ذلك. شخص يصلي ظهر مثلا 5 ركعات. A person is praying Salat al-Dhuhr and he stood for the 5th rak'ah. And he doesn't remember. He's prayed the whole rak'ah now. And now he's sitting for the final tashahhud. And now he has realized that he is in his 5th rak'ah. Then in that scenario, what the person should do is he should stop immediately and make the tasleem. He should stop immediately and make the tasleem. And we'll give an example of what he should be doing with the sujood as-Sahw, but this is just an example of him adding something to the prayer. So as soon as it comes to his attention, he should stop. So now that's the second scenario of a person doing something extra. The third scenario that the Shaykh gives of a person doing something extra is that whilst he's doing the action, he remembers. So now imagine, let's go back to Salat al-Dhuhr that the Shaykh is giving again. He's in his 4th rak'ah. He should be sitting for the final tashahhud, but he stands for the 5th. And as he stands for the 5th, he remembers. So he should sit back down straight away. Or he's doing the Fatiha, then he should sit back down straight away. So now the Shaykh is saying here, during the action, the second one, example that he gave, is after he's completed the action, or is towards the end of the action. But the third example of a person doing something extra is whilst he's doing the action itself. In that scenario, he should sit down right away and stop doing that thing which is extra. Okay? Now, what do we do with the sijda? So the Shaykh said, now, if a person has added something extra, now this is a very important principle because it can get a little bit confusing. And as we will see later on, some of the ulama have said that you should always do the sujood as-Sahw after the salam. And this is an opinion of the Hanafis and others from the ulama. They said that always sujood as-Sahw will come after the salam. What does that mean? He finishes the prayer, he does the tashahhud, he does the durood, he does the supplications at the end of the prayer. Then he does salam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum. Then he does the sajda. Then he comes back up, and according to the Hanafis also, then he'll do another tashahhud, and then the tasleem. So what that means is that sahw in his salah, that forgetfulness in the salah, has been compensated up by 2 sajdas after the salam. The Shafi'is have said that the 2 sujood of sahw should come always before the salam. What does that mean? He does his tahiyyat, he does the rule, he does the dua, and before he makes the tasleem, before he finishes the prayer, he should then do the 2 and then make the tasleem, one to the right and one to the left. However, there's another opinion. This is what the Shaykh is elaborating on here. And this is the opinion of the Malikis and some of the Hanbalis, as you will see because this is an opinion that he follows, as well as his teacher, the one that he was influenced by a lot, by Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, and Bin Baz also, rahimahullah, is that there is further investigation, because there's different evidences which give us different outcomes. Now what he is saying here, for example, if a person has added something to the prayer, then in that scenario, the Sujood as-Sahw should be made after the Tasleem. If he has added something to the prayer, then he should make the Sujood as-Sahw after the Tasleem. And the evidence for that he brings, rahimahullah, is the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in one scenario, he prayed 5 raka'at for Salatul Dhuhr. So then the people asked the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Azid fi salah, has the salah increased? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, why are you saying that? They said, Sallayt khamsan, you have prayed 5 raka'ats, not 4. And then Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he added something, he made then the 2 sajdatain of the Sahw after the Tasleem. These are just some scenarios that the Shaykh has now brought about az-ziyada. And az-ziyada refers to adding something to the salah. Now the Shaykh is going to talk about if a person misses out something in the salah. A naqs. Now a naqs refers to somebody forgetting something, or he makes a mistake in something, or he overlooks something. So instead of, for example, after Surah Al-Fatiha, he forgets to recite a surah. Is that forgetfulness? Yes, it's a forgetfulness. Okay, but now we need to investigate. Does that then need for us to make Sujood as-Sahw or not? Why not? It's not a pillar of the salah, good, and it's not, is it obligatory? It's not obligatory, according to the correct opinion. So for that, in that scenario, just like raising the hands, just like he's missed one of the adhkar, which are not wajib, which are not pillars. So in that scenario, he doesn't need to do anything. So now, he's forgotten something, but then that is fine. But say, for example, if a person forgot to say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, is that a pillar, or is that obligatory, or is that sunnah? So now, we're not going to discuss that, because that's a whole different scenario. But just for us to understand that in some scenarios, there is sahw, and something there isn't. So now the Shaykh is saying an-naqs. An-naqs refers to a forgetfulness. Maybe he was hasty, maybe he genuinely forgot, maybe there was a mistake, maybe he got distracted by something. So now the Shaykh is saying here, if a person forgets something on purpose, and he leaves it out on purpose, and it is one of those obligatory parts of the salah, or it is one of those pillars of the salah on purpose, then the salah, what's the scenario in that? It's invalid. Just like what we said in adding. But if the person has, so this is why it's very important for us to understand that some things are obligatory and some things are not. And this, if a person was to investigate further, he will benefit in the khushu' in his salah, he will benefit in, how he is praying the salah. And that is one of the reasons why we looked at the description of the prayer in the previous sitting. But now the Shaykh is saying here, if a person has missed out something which is obligatory or pillar on purpose, then the salah is invalid. But he makes a very important point here, the Shaykh, rahimahullah. The Shaykh said, if a person misses out, if he misses out the takbiratul ihram, whether the person does it by accident or not, the salah is invalid. That is because it is a pillar. So if you miss out a pillar, then there is no excuse for it. If you miss standing up, then there is no excuse for it. Then the salah is invalid. If you've done it by forgetfulness, then you're not sinful, inshallah. But either you now, we will see what you do, either you now make up that rak'ah again, or you go back to the point of where you made that mistake. But the Shaykh is mentioning takbiratul ihram in particular here. Why do you think he's mentioning takbiratul ihram? It's a pillar, yeah, but ruku' is a pillar and sujood is a pillar. How is takbiratul ihram different? It's the first, it's the entering of the salah. It's the entering of the... So there is no qada. You have to go back to that starting point. Nevertheless, so that's what he is saying, rahimahullah. That if a person, tarakaha amdan am sahwa, if a person leaves it on purpose or by mistake, then the salah is not even in operation. It's not established. It's not even going on. So this is very important. Now, it's very important for us to notice also that when the Imam is starting with the Takbirat al-Ihram, if you do it before the Imam has begun, and you find this a lot, then that person's salah, according to the majority of ulama, is not valid either. So if the Imam is just saying Allah, and you will find some people saying Allahu Akbar straight away before the Imam, then that person has not entered into the salah, just based on what the Shaykh is saying here himself, that the Takbirat al-Ihram is one of those ones you have to be very careful on. And same with Tasleem as well, that if you go before the Imam in Tasleem, you finish the salah before the Imam, that's not possible. So the Shaykh is saying here now, if a person misses out something, then in that scenario, either if he's done it on purpose, then the salah is invalid. Or if he does it by accident, then in that scenario, we have to look at the situation. Is it something which is wajib? Is it something which is a pillar? And now the Shaykh is mentioning that point that we were mentioning here before, which is that if a person has missed out a pillar, that can never be excused. Now the majority of the ulama have said that he should then repeat that rak'ah. So let's give a scenario here. Say he is in his second rak'ah and he forgets to sit for, or he forgets the second sajda. And then he stands up for the third. So how many sajdas has he made? One. What has he missed out as a pillar? One sajda. So now the ulama have said that if he has stood up for the third rak'ah, that now becomes his second rak'ah, because that second one has been X'd out, because he has missed a pillar. And that's the opinion of the majority of ulama. There's also another opinion, like the Shaykh is mentioning here, and you will find this in the books of the Hanabila, is that they've said, is that if a person is still able to go back, so he's not fully raised up, then he should go back to the point of the mistake that he is in. He should go back to the mistake, or the point of the mistake where he was, and then continue. And he doesn't need to repeat a whole rak'ah again. And then he should do the sajdatain of sahw afterwards. This is if it is a pillar. If it is something which is obligatory, then the ulama are completely agreed that he shouldn't go back. The ulama are completely agreed that he shouldn't go back. And this actually happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where he missed out the first tashahhud. So you pray 4 rak'at, after 2 rak'at you have the first tashahhud. That first tashahhud, is it a pillar? Is it obligatory? Or is it sunnah? Obligatory. How do we know? Because the Prophet ﷺ missed it out. Had it been a pillar, he would have sat back down immediately, or repeated that rak'ah again and then go back to that point. But the Prophet ﷺ was made aware because they made tasbih, but he already stood up. So now we learn that if you have missed something which is obligatory, then you do not go back. And the ulama, and this is the opinion of the majority, for obligatory parts you don't go back. And the reason why is that if you end up going back, what you end up doing is adding to the salah which is not part of it. Do you understand that? So now if he stood up for the third rak'ah, and now he's in the third rak'ah, he's missed the first tashahhud. If he was to sit down, then he's added a standing up and sitting down. So the ulama have said that would then nullify his salat. But in the issue of a pillar, the pillar is one of those things that the salah needs. So either you can go back if you are able to go back and you've not fully moved on, or you X that previous rak'ah out and then you carry on. These are now examples, and he gives examples, and we've just given some examples, so we don't need to go into that any further. And then the Shaykh elaborates also that there are differences in forgetfulness in pillars and obligatory parts, and we've kind of just covered that now also. And like I said, I'm just trying to keep this as brief as possible. So what we have learned so far is that you have pillars and you have obligatory parts. If you add a pillar on purpose, then the salah is invalid. But if you add a pillar by accident, then you need to make sujood as-Sahw after the Tasleem. If you have forgotten something, which is a pillar, on purpose, the salah is invalid. So anything that you do on purpose, salah is invalid. But if a person forgets to do a pillar, especially takbirat al-ihram, he needs to be very cautious on that one, and the tasleem. But if the person forgets to do any one of the pillars, then he needs to repeat that rak'ah again. If it's an obligatory part, then he carries on. And now, this is the second differentiation between the ulama, is that if a person forgets something, then the sujood as-Sahw, the 2 sujood for Sahw, should be done before the tasleem. Before the tasleem. And what's the evidence for that? So now if you remember the hadith that we quoted just a minute ago in Mas'ud, the Prophet ﷺ prayed 5, and he did sujood as-Sahw after the tasleem. Now there is another narration which has been recorded by Bukhari, that Abdullah ibn Buhayna radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ prayed Salatul Dhuhr, and he stood after the first 2 rak'at. This is the example I just gave a moment ago. He didn't sit for the first tashahhud. So the people stood with him. And then the Prophet ﷺ, because of a forgetfulness, because of a naqs, because of there was a deficiency, he made the sajdatain for Sahw, he made the 2 sajdas for Sahw before the tasleem. So now what the Malikis have extrapolated from this, and some of the Hanabila have gone with this also, in that the person, if he adds something before or after the tasleem, after the tasleem. If he forgets something before or after, before. Excellent. Now we can move on to talking about if a person has a level of doubt in the prayer. Adding, you know you've added. Forgetting, you know you've forgotten. You just realize, subhanAllah, now I'm standing, I should have sat, and I realize I should have, I've not sat for tahiyyat. I remember that now. But doubt is the most tricky one. Now this is very important, because what the Shaykh is saying here, what is doubt? The Shaykh said, "Hu at-taraddud bayna amrayn." It is a uncertainty between 2 things. Now it's very important for us to now define what shak actually is, what doubt actually is, because the Shaykh makes a very important point here, is that if a person has a thought, and he says, وَهْمٌ لَا حَقِيقَةَ لَهُ كَالْوَسَاوِسِ, this is not a doubt. If a person has a passing thought, or he has, something which has no basis to it, then this is just wasawis, and he shouldn't pay attention. This is not a doubt. What is a doubt? The Shaykh is saying here, التردد بين أمرين أيهما الذي وقع. Any one of those could have happened, and he is sure in himself that this could have happened or that could have happened. So this is very important for us to understand inside salah and outside salah, because the shaitan will come and he will try and deceive you, and he will try and give you doubts. If he is going to tell you, Man khalaqa hadha, man khalaqa, who created this and who created this, and then eventually he will say, who created your Lord? If he's going to create doubts in your aqidah, if he's going to create doubts when you are alone, if he's going to create doubts for you when you're in the masjid, then certainly he's going to come and create doubts for you whilst you are in your salat. So this is a very important principle when it comes to dealing with wasawis from the shaitan. The Shaykh is saying here, if you have a thought that comes into your head, just leave it. Don't think about it. The more you start thinking about those things, the more the shaitan knows that, I've got a grip on this person. I'm making him think about it. He's not even gone back to Allah. He didn't even say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. He didn't even think, let me forget about it. He's thinking about it. That means, let me give him some more. And this could be inside the salah, it could be outside the salah. It could be a sin, it could be a weakness, it could be any... And it's very unfortunate that you find also practicing people say, I've got one weakness, but I pray, and there's no such thing. There's no such thing. What is a weakness? You can rectify that for yourself. But that creates you then having to become more upright and removing any remnants from shaitan. And as the ulama have said, the more you discard shaitan and you reject his shaitan rajim, Allah said, he is accursed and he is far away, and his plots are feeble, and he has nothing that he can attack us with if we go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you give him the chance, he will continue. So this is a very important side note. But the Shaykh is mentioning here, what is a doubt? A doubt, we are not talking about wasawis. We're not talking about possible things that could have happened. We're talking about when you realize that you could have done this one, or you could have done that one. And he gives examples. A person is praying Salatul Dhuhr, and now he doesn't know, has he prayed 3 rak'at, or is this the 4th rak'at? 4th rak'at. What does he do? He knows that he has prayed 3. He thinks it might be number 4. This is not waswasa now, because now it is a genuine... Okay, so now we're going to get into what he should be doing. Because now when you have doubt, there are 2 possible things that the person can do. But before we do that, the Shaykh is saying here, if a person is in the salat and he has a doubt during the salat, then he should do, the default should be, is what is very likely. What does he think himself is likely? So now he is in his 3rd rak'ah for Salatul Dhuhr. But he is doubtful. Is it the 4th one or is it the 3rd one? This is not, now he's not acting on what is safer. He should now think about what he thinks is most likely, go with that, and then just leave everything else. And that's it. Like we were saying before, when you start thinking about it, and when you start doubting yourself and all of those things, then the shaitan will start attacking you. The Shaykh says the first scenario, if you have a doubt, what you should do is just think in yourself what is most likely. And this is now, if you think about it, if you do this in Salah, you can do this in everything. So now I've started fasting, and on this timetable it says the time is 3:30. And on this timetable it says 3:35. I've continued until 3:35. This is the timetable I've been following, but I've just come across this timetable and it says 3:30 for beginning of Salatul Fajr. Is my siyam sahih? Is my fasting correct or not? You go with what is most likely. If you think 3:35 and you trust this mosque and you've been praying here all the time, your fasting is sufficient. There's nothing obvious outside that it's become daylight, etc. So this is a very important principle that the Shaykh is saying here. If you have any kind of a doubt, then go with what you think is likely. Now you have to ask yourself, you have to be honest to yourself, and you have to have a level of taqwa between you and your Lord. But that is the default. Then the Shaykh says, if a person knows that he has made a mistake, he knows that he has made a mistake, and now the salah is finished, because now we are talking about him knowing that he has made a mistake. We have not gone to, shall we follow what is lesser, or shall we follow what is what he has a strong likelihood on. The Shaykh is now talking about if a person is 100% clear that he's made a mistake, because he had a doubt and now it's become clear to him. The Shaykh says, if the person has made a mistake and he's finished his prayer and it's been a short time and it is not one of those pillars, okay, let's say it is one of those pillars. Say it's one of those pillars, what does he do? So now let's say, for example, he's prayed Salatul Dhuhr and he's prayed 3 rak'ah and he's done the Tasleem, he's finished the Salah. He had a doubt, but he just went with what was 3. But then he realized, you know what, no, it could have, I think it's 3. I thought it was 4, but now I've realized that it's 3. So what does he do? He stands up and he prays 1 rak'ah and then he does the Sujood as-Sahw. We're going to talk about how to do the Sujood as-Sahw later on, but now the point that the Shaykh is making here is you had a doubt, but that doubt has been recovered. Okay? The next stage is you have a doubt and you don't know. You still don't know. We're going to talk about it in a second. So the Shaykh is saying, if it's been a short time, you pray the 1 rak'ah and then you do the Sujood as-Sahw. If it's been a long time and you realized that it should have been 4, but you've actually prayed 3, then you need to pray that rak'ah, that whole unit of prayer again. Sorry, the whole salah again. The whole salah again. So say, for example, he's prayed 3. And he thought he had prayed 4 and he's done the Tasleem. Then it becomes clearer to him. Maybe someone nudged him, maybe his family member. I saw you praying. Why did you pray 3 rak'ah for? I didn't pray 3. No, yeah, I saw you prayed 3. Now it's become very clear to him, and it's been a long period of time. then the ulama have said that that person has to repeat the prayer again. And you can't just make up with the one. What is a long period of time? The ulama have differed. What is a long period of time? Some of them have differed. Some of them have said what constitutes a long period of time is the time that it takes for him to go and get his shoes and leave. Some of them have said as long as the prayer time is still in time. Some of them have said the period it takes for him to get from his masjid to his house. But the correct opinion, Wallahu A'lam, and this is the opinion of the Hanabila, Ibn Taymiyyah and others from the ulama, is that they've said whatever is deemed customarily as a long time. So if it's 1 minute, if it's 2 minutes, if it's 5 minutes, customarily. But if a person says half an hour later that you miss 1 rak'ah, then we wouldn't think that you should start praying one again. So it goes down to what is customarily acceptable at that time. So now we've got 3 scenarios with a doubt. The person has a doubt, he can get rid of the doubt and follow what is likely. That's one. The second one, it's been a short time and then he remembers. He's had a doubt and he's tried to find the right answer but he doesn't know, and then he's just gone with what he thinks and then he's finished. But then he realizes afterwards that he was wrong. You make up whatever you missed out from the pillars. If it's a wajib, then you just make the sujood al-Sahw and that's it. If it's been a long time, then you need to repeat the prayer. If it's been a long time, then you have to repeat the prayer. Now, when it comes to doubt, there are different narrations which say different things. The author now has mentioned the hadith which is collected by Bukhari and Muslim on the authority of Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِذَا شَكَّ أَحَدُكُمْ فِي الصَّلَاةِ, if any one of you has a doubt in his prayer, then what he should do first thing, what do you think he should do first thing? فَيَتَحَرَّى as-Sahw. The first thing he should do is remove the doubt and think what is the correct thing. And that's what the Shaykh mentioned initially. Remove the doubt and go with what you think is right. But if he still cannot, then he needs to follow what is still doubtful for him. Then he continues with what he thinks is likely, and then he should make the 2 sajdas for Sahw. Yes, brother.
I was going to say, going back to the long period, he's realised that he's made a mistake after doubt. That it's been a long time now, and you said he has to repeat the whole prayer if it's a pillar. What if it's not a pillar? What if it's a wajib?
Excellent.
What then?
Okay, so if it's been a long time or a short time, and it's one of the obligatory parts of the prayer, that's a very good question, because we didn't cover that as a scenario. If it's a pillar, so just to clarify this, if it's a pillar and it's been a short time, he does the pillar and he does the sajdatain for Sahw. If it's been a long time, then he needs to repeat the prayer. If it's a wajib that he has missed out and it's been a short time, then all he needs to do is the sujood al-Sahw, and then that's it. If it's been a long time and he's missed something which is obligatory, then the author is saying here, and I think this is the correct opinion, is that he doesn't need to do anything then. This is forgetfulness, and it is overlooked for him. And because it's been a long time, it's not connected, the remembering now is not connected to the mistake that he had done before. And there are plenty of evidences for that. And one of the things that Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentions is the person who was known as the Musi' as-Salat, the person who prayed badly. So he came into the mosque and he prayed, and the Prophet ﷺ said, go back, you haven't prayed, and he prayed again, and he prayed again, and prayed again. And he was missing out parts of the prayer to the extent that the Prophet ﷺ said, you haven't prayed. You haven't done one of the pillars, you haven't done one of the obligatory parts, you haven't prayed. Did the Prophet ﷺ tell him to go back and make qada of what he has been doing in the past? Or even just this prayer right now? No. So what we learn from that is that if it's been a long time and it's one of the pillars or one of the obligatory parts, then inshallah he is not sinful for it. But the majority of the ulama have said that if it's a pillar that he has missed out, then he needs to repeat that salah, because that is then something that is due from him. But if it's one of the obligatory things, then inshallah it is overlooked. Then the author goes on to the two different types of doubt, like the Shaykh was mentioning a second ago. Now, if a person has a doubt and he is not able to remove those doubts, or after the salah it doesn't come to him or somebody doesn't alert him, what does he do in that scenario? There are two types of doubts in salah. So the Shaykh is saying here, the first example is if a person tries to figure out what it is, and then he thinks of what he thinks is most likely. أن يترجح عند أحد الأمرين فيعمل بما ترجح عنده فيتم عليه الصلاة ويسلم ثم يسجد للسهو ويسلم. So the Shaykh is saying here, if a person makes a mistake and then he goes with what he thinks is most likely, he doesn't know, but he's just going with what is most likely, then he should complete the salat. But is the sajda before the tasleem or after the tasleem? According to the author here, rahimahullah, is that he should make the tasleem, then he should do the two sajdas, and then he should make the tasleem again. That is if there is a doubt. So it might be a bit confusing here. That is if there is a doubt and he's gone with what he thinks is most likely. Okay? So I'll give you an example. No, he's still praying. He's still praying. He's prayed 3 raka'ats for Salat al-Dhuhr. He needs to get up for the 4th. But he does the tashahhud. He does the tashahhud because he thinks it's the 4th. But then he has a doubt in his heart. Is this 4 or is it 3? Let me just get up and do the 3rd one. Because he now thinks this one is more likely. In that scenario, he should do the 2 sajdas after the tasleem. Because he has based it on something which he thinks is most likely. Does that make sense? Right. The second scenario of doubting, the Shaykh is saying, he has no idea. He's got a doubt, he has no idea. So let's go back to 3 raka'at here. Salat al-Dhuhr, 3 raka'at. Is it 3, is it 4? I don't know. But I will treat it as 3 because it is safer. I will treat it as 3 because it is safer. And now the ulama have talked about this when it comes to salah, but it also extends to other acts of worship. So imagine if a person is making tawaf around the Kaaba. Is this the 5th unit or is it the 6th unit? Now, if you can think about the things that you were doing in the first 4 units, maybe you were reciting a particular surah in first 4 units. Now you've finished the surah. That gives you an idea. Okay, yeah, you know what? In the first unit I was doing this, second unit I was doing it, 3rd, 4th. This is the 5th one. I know because I can recall. So now what you are doing is you are going with what is most likely because you're able to recover it. So imagine you in the same scenario again, you're making tawaf around the Kaaba. Is it the 4th or is it the 5th? I don't know. And if I carry on in this way, maybe my Umrah won't be accepted. Maybe my Hajj won't be accepted. So what do? The ulama have said, al-hal al-thaniya, the second scenario of a person being in a doubt, and la yatarajjah inda ahd al-amrayn, he doesn't know which one of the two is correct. So then what he should do, he should go with what is lesser. He should go with what is lesser. So what he will say is that, I don't know. I don't know if this is the 3rd rak'ah or the 4th rak'ah, but I will treat this as my 3rd one because this is safer. And in this scenario, the Shaykh is saying now is that the 2 sajdas should come before the tasleem. The 2 sajdas should come before the tasleem. Now for me, the best way I remember it for myself is that if a person adds something, is it before or after? After. If a person forgets something, is it before or after? Before. If a person is not sure but he thinks what is most likely, is it before or after? After. Why? The way I remember it for myself is that he has now added something to the salah of contemplation or something like that. So then he needs to then rectify that for himself and then do it after. But now if a person is still not sure and he's gone with what is lesser, that is closer for the person forgetting, because he's still not sure. What do we do when we forget? Is it before or after? Before. So these are the 4 scenarios, and there isn't a 5th one. These are the 4 scenarios when it comes to Sahw. So the Shaykh gives examples, and he gives evidences, and he gives different benefits that he gives. So we're just going to go through overlook that very quickly, because I think some of it's been repeated already. But he says there is a very important point that we need to benefit from, which is that if there is a doubt, and a person has a doubt, but it becomes clear to him in the salah, so the doubt doesn't settle, is there sujood as-Sahw for that or not? So now let's go back to the person who's praying Salat al-Dhuhr. 3 rakat, he's prayed. Do I stand for my 4th or not? I'm not sure. For a split second, I'm not sure. But then I've prayed 3, this is my 4th. It's not that he is acting upon what is lesser, and it's not that he is going with what he thinks is most likely. He had a doubt for a second, it didn't settle, and it went away because he was able to recover it. Is that considered as Sahw or not? So now, the Shaykh is saying here, according to the Hanbalis, this is not Sahw. Even by definition, it is not Sahw. But al-Uthaymin rahimahullah said, what is correct in this scenario, according to him, is that the person should make Sujood as-Sahw before the Tasleem, because there is still a degree of forgetfulness in his salat. And Allah knows best about that. I think it is stronger with the opinion of the madhab of the Hanbalis, but the Shaykh is of the opinion that whatever is considered as a doubt, then it is a doubt, irrespective of whether it settles or not. And the evidence that he uses, that the Prophet ﷺ said that if anybody has any kind of confusion in his prayer, any kind of doubt in his prayer, what he should do then is that he should complete, and then he should make the sujood, and this will be targhiman lish-shaytan. It will be a form of humiliation against the shaitan. So the Shaykh is saying here, if you look at the wording of this hadith, it is very general. And any kind of infiltration from shaitan, which causes a doubt in a person's prayer, he should then make the sujood as-Sahw for that. That's the argument by al-Uthaymin rahimahullah. For me, what seems to be clearer, and Allah knows best, is that if a person is able to recover, as in it doesn't settle, and he knows that, for a split second it was there, but it's gone now, in that scenario, he doesn't need to make sujood as-Sahw, and Allah knows best about that. So then the Shaykh moves on to talking about, and now this is a very important point, which is, and this is one of the last few masail, is sujood as-Sahw behind the Imam. So is everybody clear on sujood as-Sahw if you're praying by yourself? There's 4 scenarios. You've added something after the tasleem. That is, if it is a pillar or if it's obligatory. If it's a sunnah aspect, then there is no harm. If it's an obligatory aspect, you don't need to do it again. If it's a pillar that you've added to the prayer, what do we do? Just stop doing it. Stop doing it, and you make the sujood as-Sahw after tasleem. If you forgot something, a pillar, what do we do? You either now do the rak'ah again, or if it's not been long, if you've not moved on, then you go back to it. If you've missed out an obligatory part of the prayer, forgetfulness, then you just carry on. Again, if you've not moved on, and then you just carry on. And all you need to, you don't need to repeat that obligatory part of the prayer. All you need to do is sujood as-Sahw. Now, in this scenario, sujood as-Sahw, is it before the tasleem or after the tasleem? If you forgot something, before. If a person, now the third scenario is doubt, but doubt is of 2 scenarios. So now we've got doubt where a person thinks something is most likely. After. If a person has got a doubt and he doesn't know what is most likely, but he's gone with what is lesser so that it can be safer, before. That is what you should be doing when you're... This is basically, in a nutshell, everything that we've just discussed. But now what should you be doing if you're praying behind the Imam? So now the Shaykh points out that there are 4 or maybe 5 scenarios when you're behind the Imam. If you are praying behind the Imam, and the Imam makes a mistake, then you must follow him, because you were part of the mistake. What if you are a late comer. You missed a rak'ah and the Imam has made a mistake. If you are not part of the mistake, then there is no sujood sahw for you. Unless if he does it before the tasleem. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's say now, you came in the final tashahhud of Salatul Dhuhr, which is the fourth. You've sat down with the Imam. But the Imam missed out the second tashahhud. Okay? With me so far? Okay. The Imam himself, what does he have to do? Sujood as-Sahw before the tasleem because he has forgotten something. Okay. So now you're making the tahiyyat and you're expecting him to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, but he says Allahu Akbar. So now he's gone into sujood. What do? We have to follow him because he's our Imam. So we make the sujood with him and then he does tasleem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum. You carry on. Is there now sujood as-Sahw for you? No, because you were not part of the mistake. So that's the second scenario. The first scenario, you were with him throughout the whole salah, he made a mistake. The second one, you joined late, but you were not part of the mistake. The third one is you were a late comer and you were part of the mistake. So let's say Salatul Dhuhr again and he missed the first tashahhud. And you joined after the second rak'ah, you've missed the first rak'ah, so you need to pray one more. So you've prayed 2, 3 and 4, and before the tasleem he makes the sujood as-Sahw and then he does the tasleem and then he stands up again. You were part of the mistake. Do you need to do sujood as-Sahw again, or have you already done it? Now according to the author, what he is saying rahimahullah is that you need to do sujood as-Sahw again because you have done sujood as-Sahw because you had made a mistake but it was in the wrong place. So you need to do sujood as-Sahw again and then do the tasleem. So that's the third scenario now. With me so far? Yeah. Yes. Of course, you have to follow him, yes. Yes. Yeah. Finish one rak'ah, yes. Then you have to do it again, yes. Yeah? The reason why you have to do it again is because you were part of the mistake. All of you made a mistake because you were following the Imam. But if you make a mistake, is there such a thing as doing sujood as-Sahw in the second rak'ah or the third rak'ah or the fourth rak'ah? It doesn't exist. Therefore, what you need to do is sujood as-Sahw again for yourself for making that mistake when you were behind the Imam in the correct place and then make the tasleem. That's the third scenario. The fourth scenario, to make it even more confusing now, is if the Imam does it after the tasleem. You were part of the Imam with the mistake. And he's done the tashahhud. And he says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa. You stood up now. What do you do now? Do you sit back down? Do you carry on? What do you do? Then he goes into sujood as-Sahw. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And then he does the tasleem. What do we do then? Now the Hanabila have used this. This is one of the proofs for them to say that there is no such thing as one tasleem. Because they said both tasleems are pillars. And if one of the musallis, they stand up, whilst the Imam has said Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah at the end of the prayer, and they're already starting to get up, all of their salah is invalid. Why? It's not the correct opinion. But this is one of the ways that you can think that even if it's not the correct opinion, you still have to be very careful about this. If he does tasleem on one side, the Hanabila have said that he's not completed the tasleem because tasleem is on both sides. And what they've said is, how can the Imam still be doing his second tasleem whilst the latecomers are already on the Fatiha? When he hasn't finished the salah yet. Does that make sense? And now we have another scenario where he's done one tasleem and you've stood up now, the people to make up the rak'ah that they have missed, and now he's gone into sujood as-Sahw, and now you've made a splitting off from the jama'ah. So even if it's not the correct opinion, it is something that we need to be very conscious of, just like what we talked about when it comes to takbirat al-ihram, is that if you start the prayer whilst the Imam is starting the prayer, then that is a problem. If you started it before the prayer, then there is no disagreement between the ulama that salah is invalid. And the same applies for the tasleem. If the person has done the tasleem simultaneously with the imam, or after, or before the imam, should I say, before the imam, then there is a problem. But now the Shaykh is saying here, if the imam does the tasleem, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then he goes into sujood, what do we do? Now the Shaykh is saying here, it is better if a person follows the imam. Because in essence, the imam has not finished. Yes, he's made the first tasleem, but he needs to give another tasleem. And then it goes back to what we were saying before. If you were part of the mistake, then you need to do the sujood al-Sahw afterwards, because you haven't done it in the right place. But what if the imam's made the tasleem and the person's already standing? Does he need to sit back down again or not? And what seems to be the correct opinion in that, and Allah knows best, is that he can then carry on, because he is then forgiven for not being aware, especially if he didn't know that there was a mistake. Then inshallah, there is no harm in it. So now the Shaykh begins to summarize the treatise. He said, the Sahw, the Sujood al-Sahw, has been made for a person if he makes a mistake or if he forgets. If it's a pillar, then he must repeat the pillar and then do the Sujood al-Sahw. If it's something which is obligatory, then he doesn't need to go back, but he still needs to do Sujood al-Sahw. After the tasleem, what are the scenarios for that? If he has added something, or if there is a doubt and he doesn't know what is right, so he goes with what is most likely. Before the tasleem, he has forgotten something, or he's got a doubt and then he ends up following what is most likely. And then we've just now recently just looked at some of the ahkam connected to the imam. That is probably the most confusing part, but if you revise it, then it's not very difficult, because there's only one or two, there's probably about 5 scenarios. If you are part of the mistake, then you need to do the sujood al-Sahw, because you made a mistake. If you're not part of the mistake, then you follow the imam and you don't need to do any sujood al-Sahw after that, because you have not made a mistake. You only did sujood al-Sahw with the imam because you were following him. If he does it after the tasleem, then wait, do it with him. And if he does it after the tasleem and you happen to stand up, then that is fine also, inshallah, and then you can complete your prayer. And if, again, you were part of the mistake, then you need to do the sujood al-Sahw after the tasleem. How does he do it? Sujood al-Sahw is just like normal sajda. 2 sajdas, Subhana Rabbil A'la, 3 times, anything else that he wants to say. Come back up, again, Rabbi Filli between the 2 sajdas, sit, again, sajda, Subhana Rabbil A'la, again, 3 times minimum, or minimum once actually. Come back up, and then the tasleem. Now, like we said before, some of the ulama have said that there will be a tashahhud, but there is no evidence for that. This is not out of way of disrespect. The way that they've looked at it is that you cannot have tasleem without tashahhud. It doesn't exist. So that's the ijtihad that they're coming from. But the dalil seems to be closer with the majority of the ulama, is that if it is before the tasleem or after the tasleem, then there is no tashahhud. So the Shaykh ends up by saying, in the end, all of this, in actual fact, is to clarify that there are differences of opinion between the ulama. And even if a person does it all the time after the tasleem, or he does it all the time before the tasleem, does that affect the validity of the sujood al-Sahw? No, it doesn't. The Shaykh is saying here, it's very important for us to understand here that this risala, this treatise that he has written here, is to clarify that sometimes it is before and sometimes it is after. And if a person was to follow that formula, that would be better, because that's what the evidences seem to suggest. Ibn Mas'ud said the Prophet ﷺ prayed 5 raka'at, so he's added something, and he did the sujood al-Sahw after the tasleem. And sometimes he forgot something, he forgot the first tashahhud, and then he did it before. So now if you look at it like that, then why was he doing it before and after? It is because of the things that we have mentioned here. But some of the ulama have said, no, we will always take the before one, that is stronger. Some of them said, oh no, we will always take the... And that is now an issue which is coming down to whether what is of preference. So if a person always does it before or after, and he's genuinely confused and he can't figure it out, then there is no harm in that. If a person was to try and understand it further and follow what the Shaykh has said here, then that would be better, because he'll be acting upon the evidences, and inshallah he'll be rewarded even more because of him acting upon all the evidences. But there is no disagreement between the ulama, which is that if a person makes a mistake, then he is not sinful. And there is no disagreement between the ulama. is that if a person misses out a pillar, then he doesn't need to repeat the whole prayer again. You just carry on, repeat that pillar, repeat that rak'ah again, so that the pillar is then done, and then you do the sujood sahw. And again, there is no disagreement between the ulama, is that if a person misses out something which is obligatory, then there is no harm, and then he just needs to do sujood sahw. But there are differences of opinion, this is what we don't want to get into today, between what is a pillar and what is obligatory and what is sunnah. That is a whole separate lecture, and maybe even a series of lectures. And we ask Allah to give us iman and tawfiq. Next lesson will be on Saturday. We're back on Saturday after Salat al-Isha. And the next treatise we're going to look at, bi'idhnillah, is actually a fatwa that he wrote. Somebody asked him a question. What is the ruling on abandoning the prayer? And the answer that he gave is so extensive and is actually a summary of a book which was written by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, which is probably the best book on the topic, Hukm Tariq al-Salah. What is the ruling on a person leaving the Salah, abandoning the Salah? And he's got a very extensive book, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. And somebody wrote to him, Ibn al-Uthaymin rahimahullah, what is the ruling on a person abandoning Salah? So it's as if the Shaykh has summarized that whole book in this letter as he wrote as a response, and happens to now become a fatwa, and it happens now to become a book which is published. We ask Allah to have mercy on the Shaykh and illuminate his grave and make all of this as a sadaqah jariyah for him. Yeah.
One more question.
Yes.
If the ma'moom made a mistake,
Yeah.
say the imam went for sujood al-tilawa, and the ma'moom hasn't realized that this imam is going for sujood al-tilawa, he make ruku.
Yeah.
And then the imam stand up, and the ma'moom realized that he made a ruku while the imam was making sujood.
Okay.
And sometimes the microphone disconnected,
Yes.
and the females, they might miss some of the imam prayer, so they might miss a ruku or might miss.
Okay, so now we have two masalas. The first masala is, if the imam goes for sujood tilawa, the sajdas that we get whilst reciting the Quran. So he's gone into ruku', whilst the imam is in sajda, and then he says Allahu Akbar to come back to the standing position whilst this person's been in ruku'. Is there sujood as-Sahw for the person who has made the mistake behind the imam? Excellent. This is what I wanted to ask. Is it a pillar? Is it obligatory? No. It's one of those sunnah aspects, sujood tilaw. But there's also another masala which comes from this, which is very important, which is that if you are praying behind the imam, and you make a mistake in your own salah, so say for example you went into ruku' behind the imam and you didn't say Subhana Rabbil Azim once, Subhana Rabbil A'la once, is your salah correct or not correct? Your salah, if you're behind the imam, is correct. Do you need to make sujood sahw? No, you don't. Because the ulama have said...
But if these
طيب, جزاك الله خير. If the person, like the Shaykh is saying here, if the person has missed out an aspect of the salah on purpose, then the salah will become invalid. But the ulama have said that if a person is praying behind the imam and he has missed out something which is obligatory and not a pillar, then the imam holds the salah for the people praying behind him. That makes sense? So he doesn't need to do sahw and his salah is correct. But if he is praying behind the imam and he has missed the pillar of the salah, so this goes to the second question here now, which is that imagine if the sisters are praying and the electricity cuts out. What do the women do then? Because now there is an element of doubt and there is increasing and knocks and forgetfulness and all of those different things, but they are still behind the imam. Now the ulama I've mentioned here is that if what they should do is they should wait, because the electricity might come back. If the electricity comes back, then that's fine, then just carry on. But if it's going to be long, then the ulama have said is that they should then complete the salah by themselves. They should complete the salah by themselves. And the reason for that is because if it's a woman or a man, irrespective, is that if the imam is moving on and he's gone past one pillar and two pillars and three pillars, then you are not following him anymore. But if you have an excuse, like, you can't follow him anymore, there's no sound anymore, or even some of the ulama have said that even if the imam is very, very fast, and you'll find in some masajid, then you can basically just make a niyyah in yourself, I'm not following this guy anymore. And I'll detach myself and I'll finish the salah by myself. No, you carry on by yourself. You shouldn't make your own jama'ah. In actual fact, the majority of the ulama have said to have repetition of jama'at in the masjid is something which is not, it is definitely disliked, to say the least. Barakallahu shaykh. But
did not differentiate between the one who missed an obligation with the imam, his ma'moom,
okay.
or he started later, so he missed one rak'ah or two rak'ah. So if he started with the imam from the beginning and he missed one of the obligations unintentionally, then he shouldn't do anything because
You should carry on, yes.
But if he started later,
if he's praying behind the imam, then the imam yahmil. But if he's praying behind the imam, but if he's praying by himself and he's making up the rak'ah himself, then that takes the same ruling as him being alone. Then that makes sense. Barakallahu fikum. What about the conditions? Now the ulama have mentioned, if a person has forgetfulness in one of the conditions, like he hasn't covered his aura properly, or he hasn't completed his wudu properly, then the salah is invalid. And the reason for that is because before you start any action, all of the things, basically, before you start any action, you need to gather all of the things that you need to do in action and remove anything that is not needed to do in action. So if you want to make a meal at home, what are you going to do? If you want to make breakfast or something, gather all your things that you need, the utensils, the ingredients, and remove the things that you don't need, and the rubbish, all that will go away. Halfway through preparing, you've got no eggs. What do? Go to the shop, buy eggs, carry on and start again. Start again, isn't it? You start from scratch. So this is what the ulama mentioned. This is the best parable that I can think of. So when it comes to conditions, there is no forgetfulness. He needs to start.
What happens if you miss something, you made a mistake, but you forgot to do the
Okay. So we talked about that before. If he has forgot to make the sahw, what is the ruling on the sahw? The majority of ulama have said the sahw is wajib. And if he misses the sahw on purpose, then the whole salah is invalid. Because he missed something from the salah, which is wajib, on purpose. But if he has missed the sahw, and it's been a short time, forgotten, whatever reason, and it's been a short time, then he just makes the sahw, and then he carries on, and that's it, it's finished. If it's been a long time, so now let's say, for example, you're praying Salat al-Dhuhr, and you made a mistake in the Dhuhr, and you said, okay, I'm going to make sahw afterwards. It's obligatory part, it's not pillar, I'll make it. But then your phone rings or something, and then you run out of the masjid, and then you've gone home. And after Salat al-Asr, you remembered, subhanAllah, I was supposed to make sujood al-Sahw, but I didn't do it. Because it's been such a long time, it's excused. It's excused. No, it's excused. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. But if it's been a short time, then you make it up. But if you leave it on purpose, then you have to repeat the whole salah again.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
If you're looking at or you're observing a person praying and you see them make a mistake and you're not praying yourself, is there a way to alert them, or do you do it afterwards, tell them you need to do something?
No, you can do it during.
How do you do that?
You can speak to them. And that's fine. Umar radiallahu anh used to observe people praying in the masjid. And if they didn't raise their hands, he used to throw pebbles at them. Radiallahu anh. Asma, the sister of Aisha radiallahu anha, she came to visit her sister. And in the middle of the day, there was a loud congregational prayer that was happening in the Prophet's mosque. How does that work? It's just a shield in between. So Aisha stands on the other side of that curtain, whilst the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is leading the prayer on the other side of the curtain, and there's a congregation that's going on. Asma knocks on the door, comes inside. What is going on here? Never seen this before. There's a loud prayer. It's not Friday. It's allowed, and you're standing here. So she asks her sister, "What are you doing?" She's in salah while she's praying, and she makes a gesture towards the eclipse, and she carries on praying. So then Asma says, because that's not clear right now, because the ulama have said that there was only one eclipse in the time of the Prophet. So for Asma it's not clear that is that the reason why you're praying or not? So Asma asks another question. Are you praying because of the eclipse? And Aisha radiallahu anha nods her head. So now if a person is praying the prayer and you need to alert them of something, not that this becomes something that a person should be communicating with. And again, like we said in the very beginning, it's very important that we take concentration seriously, and it's one of the characteristics of the people of Jannah and people of the believers, how you can, perfect your iman, etc. And like Abu Darda said, that it's from the intelligence and the fiqh of a person, is that he perfects the khushu' and the concentration in his prayer, and when he prays, his heart is completely devoid of everything else, and he gives total concentration and focus to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, if there is a need, if there are things that arise, and sometimes if there is a greater good in it, for example, your child is going towards something which is harmful or something like that, they're crying, the phone is ringing, something like that, as you can probably imagine, then in that scenario you can, without breaking the salah, to the level that you need. Yes, uncle.
I've seen my brother after outside salah, he's completed his salah, stand up, go down, do two sujood, then stand up, go down, do 3 to 4 times. Is it undesirable?
I'm not sure why he would do that. So he's prayed the salah and then he does sujood al-Sahw standing up and then sujood al-Sahw up and down. I'm not sure why that is. The ulama have said that sujood al-Sahw is connected to the salah. There's no such thing as a person finishing the salah and then standing up, and then there is no record of that from any of the ulama. What it could be is because the Hanafi madhab have said that if you have sujood al-tilawa, that is wajib. The majority of the ulama have said that is sunnah. I'm just guessing. I'm not saying that this is it. I'm just guessing because there's another possible couple of scenarios. So the second scenario that comes to my mind is that they have said that if you have sujood tilawa that comes and you don't do it, then you could be sinful if you don't make qada for it. And the only time when you do not do it is if it's one of those makruh times, because they, from their madhab, and many of the ulama have said that sujood tilawa is a form of salat. So you need to cover your awrah, you need to face the qibla, you need to have wudu, you can't do it after fajr and asr. So if he is, for example, after Salatul Fajr, he's reciting the Quran and he manages to do 2-3 juz, especially towards the end, there's probably about 3 sujood al-tilawa. What does he do now? So now he has to make, according to that madhab, he has to make qada of it. But the correct opinion is that when it comes to sujood al-tilawa, it is not obligatory. The Prophet ﷺ had one of his companions recite to him once, and he didn't. He recited to the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't make sajda himself, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't make sajda. And there's a very clear testimony from Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh. During the khutbah once, he recited an ayah which there was sajda, and he came down and he made sajda, and everybody behind him made sajda, and then he stood up and he carried on with the khutbah. Next week he recited another ayah with sajda, and he didn't do the sajda tilawah, and he said to them, last week we did it, and this week we were not going to do it. And the reason why is because anybody who does sajda al-tilawa or recites the ayah of sajda al-tilawa, it's up to him. What does that show? Is that it is not wajib. So that's probably the second scenario. There's another scenario which has been innovated, especially in our culture, is where they say that you should make sajda on the ground and make supplication to Allah. And the evidence for that is that the Prophet ﷺ said that أقرب يكون العبد من ربه فهو ساجد. The closest that a person is closest, the closest time that you are with your Lord is whilst you're in sujood. So some people have come up with this idea, which is that when you want to supplicate to Allah, yes, you should raise your hands, but there is another way that you can supplicate to Allah, is by making sajda outside of salah. Just go into sajda and supplicate to Allah for something. But that's an innovation, and you will not find any of the madhab saying this. And the meaning of the hadith is that you make sajda during your salah, and not that you have a separate sajda for dua. So Allah knows best why this person is doing it, but that is definitely not the way that you would perform sujood salah. Yeah, if you can, advise him, alert him that this is not correct. But the problem is now, Uncle, is that we're living in a world where people are easily offended, and there are so many different opinions. And if you tell someone and you alert someone that they might be doing something wrong, and they might never come to the mosque again, and those kind of things. So if it is something which is just tolerate it. Yeah, there are some things which are narrated. There are some things which are narrated for sujood tilawa, which are specific for that. But if you said Subhana Rabbil A'la, then it's sufficient. Yeah, inshallah. So inshallah, our next session will be next Saturday after Salatul Isha, where we'll be looking at the ruling on abandoning and leaving the Salah, or sometimes leaving the Salah, or sometimes missing the Salah. We'll look at all of those things inshallah next week. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.